Okay, today, Thursday, October 6th, 2022 at 11:30 a.m. I, Anit Tyagi, am interviewing Tom Kawano at the Rocky Mountain Regional VA Medical Center in Aurora, Colorado. All right, so Tom, where were you born and where did you grow up?
I was born in Welby, Colorado. And Welby is off of, it's kind of West Denver, off of like 72nd and I-25 in that area. And then when I was in first grade, my parents moved us to North Glen. And that's where my grandma's farm was. So that's where I grew up with. So it's kind of like North Glen on a vegetable farm, which had all the vegetables, about 40 acres, and about 40 acres was in alfalfa, for the cattle, and we had pigs and all the chores and stuff. So me and my brother, we really worked our butt off.
Nice. So let's move on to the early days of service. So what motivated you to join the military? Were you drafted or did you enlist?
Well, actually, to be honest with you, for the military service, after 2 years of college, I was trying to major in crop science. That's an agricultural field. And I was getting D's and F's in every science course that I took the first 2 years. So I was almost flunking out. So then I decided to do something different instead of continuing the education. So that's when I enlisted in the Army. I had a choice at the recruitment station whether I'd go into the Army or the Air Force. And for some reason, I just turned left and walked in the Army one because that seemed like a little more familiar to me because my mother was in the Army during World War II. So I was enlisted.
Nice. So you mentioned you entered the Army. Was there any specific reason you chose the Army besides?
Not really. It was just by chance. As soon as I saw the Air Force part of the recruiting station, I thought, Air Force, does that mean going in the air and flying or jumping out of airplanes? I said, I don't want to do that. So then I decided to just go in the Army because that's more familiar to me. It was one of the best moves I ever made. So when I joined the Army, and I was sent, after all my training, I was sent to Germany because I enlisted. Any person that enlists has a choice of where they want to go. So on the sheet, I checked Germany, and that's where they sent me. And while I was in Germany, I had another brother that was in Germany also, and another brother was in Thailand. So 3 of us were in the service at the same time. And then, like I said, during World War II, my mother was actually the first Japanese American woman to volunteer for the U.S. Armed Forces. And she was part of the Women's Army Corps. And she worked in the language department. And what I'm also proud of is her actual uniform is at Arlington National Cemetery. And that's a picture of it is, but the actual uniform is at the Japanese American Museum in San Francisco. So our family has a good military background. We're proud of it. And then I also had an uncle that was from California. They took him to one of the internment camps. And he was in the internment camp until he decided to enlist in the all-Japanese regiment, which was the 442nd Regiment, U.S. Army. They were all Japanese Americans that enlisted. And most of them enlisted out of the internment camps. And after his training, he was sent to Italy, and he was killed over there.
Oh.
So that's something that I tell people to think about, how somebody can go from an internment camp, to volunteering for this country and then being killed overseas for that. So
All right,
So my extended family, we have a pretty good military background.
absolutely,
We're proud of it.
absolutely. So speaking of your wartime service, which wars did you serve in and where exactly did you travel and for how long?
Yeah, I was in the military during Vietnam. But since I enlisted, instead of checking Vietnam, I checked Germany, so they sent me to Germany. And I was there for 3 years. And while I was there, my training was as an armorer, which is somebody that takes care of the weapons for the company. I was actually in a heavy equipment maintenance battalion. And then right before I left, the last 6 months, I was the company's supply sergeant in charge of everything. And then when I was getting ready to leave the service, the officer in charge came up to me and wanted me to re-enlist for another 3 years. And I thought about it for about 5 seconds. And I told him, no, I don't think I want to. And he said, well, they're going to give you 10,000 to re-enlist. But the first thing I thought about, me being a Colorado native, I told him, I says, I don't want to enlist because I'll be too far away for an extended period from the Denver Broncos, our football team. That's how loyal to our football team I am. So I declined and didn't enlist.
All right. So what were your primary job assignments and responsibilities during service? So I know you mentioned maintaining the armor.
Yeah, I was a company armorer. So at first, when I went over there, the rifle that we had used was called an M14. That's what they used through World War I and World War II. And then when I was the company armorer, we got our supply of the new M16 rifles, the automatic firing ones. So I had to unbox 300 of them, wipe all the grease out of them and put them together and all that. And then I had to box up all the old M14s and they were shipped back wherever. And then what I also did was that then towards the end, as the company supply sergeant, it was my duty to rotate the ammunition every year. So I would take everything in a deuce and a half truck. It was a 2.5 ton truck, a cargo truck. And I used to drive it all the way up to northern Germany, give them the old ammunition that expired and pick up new ammo and then bring it back to our company. That's called rotating the ammo. So I had to do that regularly.
Wonderful.
And then other than that, all the other time was spent taking care of the company needs, whether it was supply, weapons, things like that. And of course, I had to go to the rifle range and qualify. So that's pretty much my tour over in Germany.
Nice. So what is the most vivid or fond memory of your service that you will never forget?
This is kind of minor, but one of the things I always remember, and I tell other vets, this is kind of simple, but when I was the supply sergeant, I had my desk, and I had glass over the top of it, and we put our paperwork underneath the glass. That way, nothing spills on it. So one night, I left my coffee cup in the middle of the desk, styrofoam cup with coffee in it. I came in the next morning and coffee actually ate through the styrofoam and the coffee cup was laying on its side and coffee was all over my desk. I'll never forget that. So that made me, for the last 6 months I was there, to not drink coffee. So anybody here at the VA Medical Center that's getting coffee and I'm standing there yakking with them, I'll tell them that story and they get a kick out of it. That was my most vivid memory of something that's been with me all my life. It's kind of funny, but
Right, absolutely. Speaking of which, do you recall any particularly humorous or unusual events?
Well, humorous was just the coffee incident. And then the unusual event was, we had in the company, we had this Indian, he was a full-blooded Indian, and he was alcoholic, which was kind of sad. And right before I left, he actually jumped out the barracks window and fell like 2 stories. And so they gave him a medical discharge. So I really feel sorry for him. Nothing against the Indians or anything like that, but it was just the circumstance.
Right.
And the only other circumstance that I vividly remember is when I got over to Germany, a bunch of us, I think there was like 6 of us, we all just got there. Then 2 weeks, in 2 weeks, we got liberty. So then we got on the Strasse, the light rail in Germany that goes between all these towns and everything. So we got on the light rail, and then we paid our Deutschmarks for the ride. And then about 15 minutes into the ride, this lady gets on there from one of the stops, and she had a uniform on. And she come up to us after she talked to everybody else, and she asked where we were going and if we paid. And then she says, we told her where we were going. It was pretty far. And apparently we didn't pay enough to go that far. And then she kicked us off the trolley. And we didn't know how to get back to base, so we had to call a taxi. Well, that was expensive. So we all anteed up cash and finally got back to the base, but that was kind of funny. This lady's chewing us out, the police officer in German. We had no clue what she was saying. I'll never forget that.
So what was the best part of your service experience?
I think the best part was the camaraderie between service people, whether it's Army and maybe a few Air Force people in, or just anybody in the service, how you develop kind of a brotherhood of, trying to help out or being courteous to the other person. And, I'll never forget that. The camaraderie was the number one thing, because we're all there together, same cause, that type of thing. So I really enjoyed that. That's why volunteering here at the VA, it's my way of giving back even more, trying to help out other vets. I talk to them quite a bit and, put them at ease, take them up to their appointments. And so it's good for me as a volunteer to do that. It's rewarding.
Yeah.
And the reward off of that is when they say thank you, and, they're very pleasant. And sometimes I'm talking to the wife and she's fairly elderly too, and they're so thankful. That's my pay, even though as a volunteer, we're not paid actually.
So now let's transition to the end of service. So were you awarded any medals or citations for your service? If so, which ones and how did you earn them?
Yeah, the first one was a good conduct medal. And the thing with that medal is everybody gets one, just as long as you stay out of trouble. So I got that out of basic training. And then I also got the medal for sharpshooter. That's the second highest level of being accurate with a weapon, from the rifle range. And then before I left, I qualified for the expert badge with the M16s, and that's for being as accurate as you can be. So that's really the only medals I got for citations. So thinking of other citations, one was just a little diploma type thing. I took 2 courses. One was called MAP something. That was an efficiency course. So as an NCO, non-commissioned officer supply sergeant, I had to go through that type of training. And since it's an efficiency type thing, we had to know how to put your chair so far from the desk, the filing cabinet, how far the trash can was away, different things. Everything had to be in its place. and set up efficiently, so you didn't waste time, trying to find something or walk a little farther. So I thought that course was kind of interesting. And the other course I had the EOD, and that was explosive ordnance disposal course on how to dispose of bombs if you come across one. And unfortunately, I don't remember anything from the class. So I got that certificate too for finishing the course.
So after service, as we transition into your later years and some of the reflections that you have on your service, so what occupations did you have after service, and what are you currently doing?
Yeah, after service, what I did was I went back to college for a summer quarter, and I still couldn't really, bring up my grades. So then I saw this ad in the paper for working for a finance company. And so that was my first job. I got on with the finance company, and my trainee job was I took the division manager's car around the city of Denver and knocking on people's doors, collecting loan payments. And sometimes I had to repossess furniture. I'd have to haul the furniture out of the house. I hated that part. So that was the entry level position. And then after I was there like 4 or 5 years, I was making consumer loans to people without the manager, it was within my credit limit. And then from there, after I got tired of that, I decided to get into banking. So I got a job as a lender with a large bank in downtown Denver. So I did that. And before I left banking, I was actually the assistant vice president in charge of the loan division. That was my last banking job. And then after that, what I decided to do, since I was looking for work again, I didn't know if I wanted to stay in finance. I decided to study for the IRS, to become an IRS agent, Internal Revenue Service. So I studied for like 8 months, and I took that exam, and I scored a 91.5, which passing you only needed a 70. And of course, they gave me 5 extra points for being a vet. So once I got the certificate, I was ready to get on with the IRS someplace. Then President Reagan got into office, and first thing he did was put a freeze on federal hiring. So I did all that studying for nothing. And then after that, I saw, looking in the want ads in the paper, I saw an ad for finance advisory. And then I got into financial advising. My specialty was taking care of average individuals, Americans, them individually or their families. Yeah, not corporate stuff, but mainly just one-on-one with average people. And my last job, I spent with the company 32 years as a financial advisor. And that was so rewarding because my time was my own. Only thing I had to do is make sure I did all my regulatory stuff correctly. And then when I left, the hardest thing about leaving that job, I told all my clients on an individual basis what I was going to do, retire. And they'd sit across from me, and the wife would be, tears would come down her eyes, because I'd taken care of them, their kids, and some of their grandkids. So my specialty was really taking care of whole family clients, with giving them the service they need, as far as saving money, making sure they had the right type of insurance, the proper coverage. And I did a little tax and estate planning. So it was a little bit of everything. So it was a rewarding career. And then once I decided to retire from that, so one of the other volunteers here was a patient transporter, and he's a volleyball player like me, and he told me about volunteering at the VA. So that's how I decided to come to the VA. And that's during the time this VA was just being built. So what I decided to do was wait till it got built completely. So I wouldn't have to train at the old VA and the new VA. So once this place was built and open, that's when I started as a volunteer. And I've been doing it ever since, gone through COVID and all that. And now I'm experienced enough that all the new volunteers that come in that want to do transport or information gathering to help people, the volunteer office sends them to me,
Right.
and I'm kind of the mentor. So I do a lot of that too. Plus, I also do escorts, where groups of people come in to view the VA, this facility, kind of tour the clinics. So they decided to go and ask me to do escorts. So I've done a lot of that. I escorted the current reigning Mrs. USA, Colorado, her and her entourage. I've done the Oklahoma State softball team. They were here for the World Series here in Denver. So I escorted them. I've done the Denver Nuggets professional basketball dancers. So I'm proud of that. And the other volunteers tease me all the time, saying, "How can you get to escort all these young ladies around?"
Right.
And so I say, "Well, whatever." And then about I think about 8 months ago, the current secretary of the Veterans Affairs from Washington came here to visit, and I was standing at the entrance, and he walked right by me, and then he turned and looked at me. He turned around and came back, walked directly up to me and shook my hand. He says, "Thank you for your service." And the thing that's interesting about that is I've been told by the senior staff here that his 2.5 hours here, he only shook one hand of anybody, and it was me. So I'm kind of proud of that. He was a pretty nice gentleman.
So, how did your military service affect your life?
Well, I think the best way it affected my life, it reinforced what discipline is. Because, my mental thought process, I like things disciplined. I like things organized in order. So that's the main thing that my parents instilled in me too. So it was just that kind of reinforced all that. And another thing was what I got from my folks, especially, is they always told me, do the right thing. There might not be any monetary value in doing that, but the reward is doing the correct thing for people. And I've always lived by that. And I try and instill those values to the new volunteers. And I explained to them on how to talk to veterans, because some of the vets come in and they have PTSD or whatever. They can barely communicate and talk. So I'm a real good listener. So I look for key words from the vets to find out what appointment that they need to go to and that type of thing. So a lot of the other vets are they say, how come you're so good at doing it this way? They stand there and they listen to me talking to the vets that come in, and I'm smooth.
Right.
I don't mind saying.
Yeah. Similarly, what are some life lessons you have learned from your military service?
Well, the main thing was just like I said, the discipline.
Mhm.
I like discipline. I don't like chaos.
Right.
Discipline, and I'd say respect for your other human beings, whether it's other veterans or just average people. Respect everybody, no matter what what race they are, gender. I think to show some of that over the last 45 years, I'm a volleyball coach and a referee. I had my own volleyball club, and we used to go to adult nationals once every year. That's the semi-pro. The level of competition is right below the Olympic teams. We're the top amateur bracket. So I would take people from age 18, and all the way up to women's age 74 and older. And I was so proud of the last 3 years of my women. After a certain period of time, they got less and less because unfortunately some are becoming more decrepit or passed away. But the last 3 years of going to nationals with my teams, my women, the elderly women over age 70, they took the gold medal 3 years in a row. That's unheard of. I was so proud of that. And what some of the other referees would tell me is, well, your team is so diversified. Because I'd have blacks, Asians, Indians, people, all different races on my team. And I looked at the majority of the other teams, it was all Caucasian.
Right.
I have nothing against anybody,
Right. Yeah.
but I like taking care of everybody. So I got part of that from the military. You have to be used to whoever's standing next to you. Respect people.
What are some things you miss about being in the service? Is there anything you're glad to have left behind?
I don't think there's anything I'm glad to have left behind because I'm of my ideas are, be helpful to everybody, enjoy everybody, respect everybody. So there's not really anything major or negative that I left behind. Even the training, which was pretty intense, physically too, and sometimes mentally. Even though I didn't enjoy that at the time, I still looked at it as a challenge. I think that's why I've had good luck with the VA, the service, my sports teams, because I'm strong enough mentally to know how to motivate, lead people. So I kind of like that. It's almost natural to me.
Is there anything you miss about being in the service?
Just meeting different people from different parts of the country. Because I'm born and raised here in Colorado. I'm third generation here. My extended family's been in Colorado for a little over 100 years. So I miss the diversity of the rest of the country. And being in the military, it's very diverse. Where people are from. And so I kind of miss that part of it, meeting all these new people from different states, different ages. I think it's interesting talking to other people about their lives or whatever.
Nice. So let's move on. So what do you wish more people, like civilians, knew about veterans and the military service?
I think one of the big things is I wish people would be able to better communicate to vets. A lot of people nowadays are impatient. They're on their phones all the time. They don't give eye contact. Vets, when we talk to each other, the eye contact is there. It's focused
Right
to just that one person you're talking to. So I kind of miss not seeing more people adjusting to be able to talk to vets, because a lot of them with mental problems, you got to talk really slow, listen very well, and be patient. And then there's others you can talk of 100 miles an hour to them, they get it. And a lot of the vets aren't computer savvy with iPhones and computers. So I think one of my strengths is I know how to read people almost immediately. So that way I know whether to talk more technically or more simply,
right,
or things like that. That's I hate to say it, but it's a fine art to being able to do that. That's why I have my station here at the VA. Other vets will bring me patients they're having trouble communicating with. And I would talk to them the way I talk to them and figure out what the appointment is or what their problem is. And
What would you like people to know or remember from your life story?
My complete life story?
Yeah.
I think probably the big thing is I tell people, I'm not phony on anything. You take me as I am. I am what I am. That's the main thing. I try not to give people fluff or that I call it a plastic personality or whatever. I am what I am and take it at what it is.
What message would you like to leave for future generations who will view this interview?
Future generations is just to learn from the veterans about how to communicate with each other. That's the main thing. Communicating with your fellow man, so to speak, as they call it, is hard for a lot of people, which I understand. But you have to be able to change or adjust the way you are to communicate better. I always try thinking of ways here at the VA while I'm volunteering. How could I communicate better to that veteran? I might have been too short, maybe a little bit, or just get a little impatient. So I think the main thing is being able to communicate with each other. I'm big on that.
Wonderful. Is there anything else you would like to add that we have not covered in this interview?
Only that I wish my local Broncos football team is better. I've followed them over 50 years, so I've lived
Wow.
and died with them.
Wow.
So we're struggling, but things will be okay in the future.
All right. Thank you so much for your time.
I appreciate it.